Okay. We're going to roll with that intro, guys. A lot of people loved it. So, I'm a man of the people. I'll give y'all what y'all want. I'm here for y'all. I'm not really here for myself, honestly. I'm here to connect with you guys. Welcome to the 209 podcast. If you do not know who I am, my name is Cody Goldbad. Born, raised, and bred in the 209, but I call it the 209. It just sounds better. 209, I don't know. 209 is way better. Anyways, thank you, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me on this gorgeous. I'm alive, so it's gorgeous. Even if it's cloudy, I don't give a damn. Every day that I wake up is gorgeous, and I think we should all agree on that. But going off of what I was talking about in the last episode, information diet, right? Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I got a lot of amazing feedback. Thank you. Have I said thank you? I'm going to say thank you one more time. I appreciate everybody that took the time to listen to me and to give feedback and to show love. It feels good to know that what you're doing is of worth and that people enjoy listening to it. So y'all give me more energy and more battery for my back, and I appreciate that. What I wanted to speak on today, which is something very interesting in my opinion, I recently read something that over the span, and this is something that I preach to my students as well. For those of you that don't know, I am a special ed teacher in the Merced Union High School District. So if there's one thing that I have told my kids on multiple occasions is that the ability to learn is probably the best and most important skill that you can cultivate during this time. The art of learning, being curious enough to want to learn, especially at this time when things are changing so rapidly, is an extremely important skill. One thing that I read recently, like I told you, was over the span of our lives, we're going to have on average 7 to 10 jobs. I don't know, some of y'all my age, 26, already have had that many jobs, but they say on average 7 to 10 jobs, and 4 to 5 of them haven't even been made yet. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we need to be adaptable. We need to be able to learn a subject that we have never even been introduced to, never even studied, never seen, but we need to be confident enough in our abilities to learn that subject. And I think the mindset towards learning is something that is very interesting, because I grew up, I think like everybody had the same experience. We never wanted to be wrong in class, right? We never wanted to be wrong because we look stupid in front of our peers, or quote unquote stupid, right? I've had that happen to me many times. Even when I was in college, I was a bitch sometimes, and I didn't want to say because I just didn't know how stupid it looked. But looking back, it was dumb. There are 3 different concepts that intertwine beautifully to help us cultivate this learning mindset. Mindfulness, non-judgement, and what's known as the beginner's mind. I feel like these 3 concepts can turn anybody into a superhuman because they put you a level above your thoughts. I think a lot of us are just living from our thoughts and are allowing our thoughts to dictate how we feel and what we should do. That cycle of that monkey mind, that's what they call it. They call it a monkey mind because each thought is swinging from vine to vine, never stopping. So the 3 concepts that are going to help us calm this mind and to help us put ourselves in the best position mentally to receive information are mindfulness, the idea of non-judgment, and the last one, the beginner's mindset. So mindfulness is, let's give an introduction to mindfulness. Mindfulness was something that I was introduced to when I was in college. I read the beautiful book called Wherever You Go, There You Are by Jon Kabat-Zinn. If you have not read that, I'd highly recommend it. It's an amazing introduction to meditation and everything that I'm going to speak on. A lot of that information I get from that book and other books as well, but that was the great introduction to what mindfulness is. Observing the moment in a non-judgmental fashion. The most important pillar of mindfulness is non-judgment. Now, if I had to expand on that, non-judgment is taking the situation for what it is and not identifying a particular feeling or word with that experience. Because when we identify or when we judge, which is something that our mind has been trained to do or has been conditioned, I believe the conditioned is the better word. Our mind has been conditioned to be constantly judging, constantly judging. How am I feeling? How's everything going? Am I mad? Am I sad? Am I happy? This is constantly happening in our minds, right? But we do not want to identify with a specific state of mind. We do not want to identify. I think that's very important. When people are going through a tough time, whether that be having depressive thoughts or anxiety, they tend to identify with those thoughts. But those thoughts are only temporary. I don't know if you noticed, but thoughts keep coming and going. Where do thoughts come from and where do they go? The same place, right? They come from the mind and then they go back into the mind. So, realizing that this cycle is something that we can be mindful of and step above mentally. So we are not controlled. This is where mindfulness comes in, because mindfulness is known as a practice of sitting and observing. But you can be not just sitting, you can be mindful doing anything. You could be mindful washing the dishes. You could be mindful taking out the clothes. You could be mindful riding the bike. Any action could be an opportunity to practice. But as an introduction, and something that I did when I was young as well, was just sitting. Just finding a quiet space where you feel comfortable. I usually find it on a piece of grass. I go to my backyard, there's a nice piece of grass right there, and I just sit. If you cannot sit with yourself for 5 minutes, I think that shows a lot about how much your mind is working or how uncomfortable you are with the thoughts that you are having. Because just sitting down for 5 minutes seems like an eternity at the end of the day. But as you practice, as 5 minutes turns to 10 minutes, at first, the thoughts, since you are observing them like you've never observed them before, since you've never took the time to sit and do nothing else except observe what's going on top of your head, or what are the thoughts that are occurring, taking this time and just being observant in a non-judgmental fashion, that's huge. You do not want to judge any of the thoughts that go through your head. None of them. Even to this day, and I've been meditating for not that long, but I mean since college, but at the beginning, it was very difficult because the thoughts would go from one vine to the next vine to the next vine. But the longer that you practice, or the more that you practice, the gap between thoughts expands. Thoughts are important, but should you be thinking 24 hours out of the day? Or, I mean, I guess you're not thinking when you're sleeping, but the majority of your wakeful consciousness should not just be in a state of thinking. Thoughts should arise, but you should not be living in that space the whole day. You should be living in the space in between the thoughts, for the most part. Rational thought has its purposes, for sure. It's a beautiful blessing. But when we let it take over how we feel, what we do, how we react, then it can become very dangerous, because the mind is unstable to a certain extent. Even to this day, I think we all, I don't think I'm ever going to get rid of them, but we all have negative thoughts that we encounter throughout the day. Whether it be, oh, I'm not feeling good, or I just don't have the energy, any type of self-defeating or negative, any type of thought that brings you down and doesn't affirm your strengths or your attributes, that's something that we cannot get rid of. But you can condition yourself to not believe those thoughts and let them go. The more time you spend sitting by yourself, observing your thoughts, you notice over time that those thoughts begin to diminish. They do not come as rapid as they were before. Now, a very important aspect of mindfulness to help you stop, or not stop, I shouldn't say that, that's not the word, but to help you observe and live with your thoughts is to use the breath as an anchor. The breath is something that you can always switch your awareness to. So if currently right now you are thinking, damn, Cody's crazy, this fool's out here doing a podcast, he's talking that bullshit, right? If that's the thought that you're going through, or whatever thought that you're thinking, if you took the time to switch your awareness to your breathing, the sensation of you inhaling, the sensation of you exhaling, when you decide to put your attention to the breath, now at the beginning it's going to be difficult because you're not going to be able to keep your awareness on the breath for very long. The thoughts are going to keep coming, right? But that's why breath is considered an anchor, because it's always going to keep you down. It's always there to keep you from going off into the sea of thoughts. That's the way you need to view this. Your breath is always there to keep you down to earth and not in the field of thoughts that we're constantly living in. One thing about the breath that I have learned is that the exhale is the calming breath. Now, a lot of us breathe from our mouths and our neck and our noses probably, but we rarely, and this is something I wasn't doing myself, we rarely take the breath down towards our stomach or towards our abdomen. And it's called diaphragmatic breathing. So you inhale while expanding your diaphragm, which is close to your stomach. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a baby breathe, but if you see a baby breathe, their stomach is going with their breath. When they inhale, their stomach comes up. When they exhale, their stomach goes down. So, putting your awareness on this. And a trick that I learned, or it's not really a trick, but it's like a tip, is that for a long time I thought, or I had believed that the inhalation is the first breath, right? Or is the most important. But when you mentally decide to focus on the exhalation as the first breath, I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, get in contact with me, please, and I can help you understand this. But when you focus on the exhalation, believe that the inhalation is secondary, then that's when you are able to extend that exhalation and focus on it. Because the more you extend that exhalation, you notice that your heart starts beating slower. Extending your exhalations is the calming breath, like I said. So if we take the time extending our exhalations, it will help in calming that monkey mind that we all have to deal with on a daily basis. Concepts that we've gone over so far: mindfulness, which is observing the present moment in a non-judgmental way. Non-judgment, very important. Mindfulness and non-judgment go hand in hand. You cannot have mindfulness without being non-judgmental, because if you are being judgmental, that means you are focusing on your thoughts. But if you are non-judgmental, you are the sky and not the clouds. That is the analogy that a lot of Eastern philosophy has explained, is that our mind is the sky and our thoughts are the clouds. And a lot of us live in the clouds. But if we realize that we are the sky behind it, it takes the pressure off. One of my favorite quotes is that certain clouds come into my life not to bring a storm, but to add color to my sunsets. And I believe that's very powerful. I try, guys. I'm not perfect. There's times when I get into my thoughts, especially the negative ones, and I run with them, or I believe them. The time that it takes me to go back to my anchor, to rise above those thoughts, is not very long. I'm able to do it quicker. Before, obviously, when I haven't had as much practice, it took me a while. I would just live in my thoughts all day. I think we all can, maybe not all of us. I mean, I have no idea. I can't make any assumptions here, but there's something that I dealt with is social anxiety. Nothing crazy, but I mean, I think we all to a certain extent have anxiety about life. what's going to happen, what's happening. We all have those anxious thoughts that put us on the edge. But when we take the time to sit with our thoughts in a quiet place, preferably away from people, and take that time to observe our mental state of mind, specifically those thoughts. They call it meditation, but I just want to call it sitting. I don't want it to make it a crazy. It is literally just sitting down. And if you don't have 5 minutes to sit down and be with your thoughts, what's funny is they usually say if you don't have 5 minutes, you really need 3 hours of sitting because you're already not in a healthy mindset. So if you do not feel like you have 5 minutes in your day, in your shelter-in-place quarantine day, to be with your thoughts, we have a bigger problem on our hands. But in that 5 minutes, which is something that I've noticed myself for doing it for years now, is that's where I truly learn about myself. I truly learn about how I work or what's important to me. What thoughts arise when I decide to sit down and don't do anything else. I think those thoughts are very interesting because it tells us a lot about ourselves. What do we have fear of? What are we anxious of? What are we happy about? They're not all bad thoughts, right? A lot of them, I believe, are, since the mind is so heavily connected to the animalistic part of our brain, the amygdala. Since it's so close to it, it is, if you do not have training or you have not practiced, it is in a sort of fight or flight or freeze mode. That's what our thoughts generally are, since they're connected to that animalistic amygdala that we have. So, mindfulness, observing the present moment in a non-judgmental fashion. Mindfulness and non-judgment. Not identifying or putting a word with the specific feeling or experience that you're having. Letting it be. When we identify ourselves with depression, or we identify with feeling bad and say, oh man, I am depressed, or I am not feeling good, we are putting that I and identifying it with that feeling. But you are only feeling that for a temporary amount of time. That is not how you're going to be feeling maybe an hour from now, or 2 hours, or tomorrow. That is only how you're feeling in that specific moment. So if we can take it back to the cloud in the sky analogy, those are just clouds going by. You have the power to decide if you are going to go with that cloud or if you're going to be the sky above it, overlooking, observing. You are not just that one thought, you are everything. So it's very powerful when we decide not to identify with our thoughts, or when we decide to, or when we make the decision as to which thoughts we do believe in. I believe that's very powerful. Observing the present moment in a non-judgmental way. Now, the last concept that I want to speak on goes with these two topics as well, is this idea of a beginner's mind. So what is this? So I learned this from Eastern thought as well. Bruce Lee was a big proponent of the beginner's mind. So it's basically the idea that in whatever field that you are trying to learn, or whatever field that you are putting yourself into, if you come into that with the mindset that I am a beginner, I know nothing, it sort of in a way takes the pressure off of you, because you don't need to know anything. When we go into certain fields that we don't have experience in, we tend to have negative thoughts towards our ability to thrive into that field. For example, recently I've been working on this 209 stuff, so it's been a lot of learning. I've been having to go talk to planning. I've been having to go website design, clothing, all this business license. There's so many things that I've had to learn in a very short amount of time. But when it began to get overwhelming and I began to have negative thoughts, I would remind myself that I am a beginner. There's no reason that I should know everything. So when you come at something with that mindset, it allows for learning to happen a lot easier. If Bruce Lee, after so many years of doing martial arts, still believed that he was a beginner, there's no reason why you think you should have mastered anything in life. If we constantly bring that beginner's mindset into whatever we're doing, we will be lifelong learners, which we should be. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. Please let me know if anything else that you guys like me to speak on. I want this to be an open dialogue, like I said. 3 concepts for today. Mindfulness, observing the present moment in a non-judgmental fashion. Non-judgment, please do not judge yourself. I was more mean to myself, but I've become less mean to myself over the years. I think it's funny how, and this is, I can only speak personally, but we tend to have more patience for other people in certain aspects than we do with ourselves. I think we get down on ourselves a lot more than we do for other people. So switching that relationship, I believe, can lead to a better and more happy state of mind. Absolutely, for sure. I was lucky to study cognitive science at UC Merced. The brain has this attribute called plasticity. That means that it can change. So, if your brain can change, that means that it can adapt to whatever situation that you find yourself in. If your mind allows you to, if your thoughts allow you to, and your thoughts can aid in that learning experience if you bring that beginner's mindset to whatever you do. So, for example, I've played soccer. For a lot of you that don't know, I've played soccer my entire life, but I try my best in every moment to keep that beginner's mindset. Even though I've been playing it all my life, I still want to believe that I am a beginner, that there is a lot more that I need to learn. So from that aspect, I am able to grow at a much more rapid rate as if I told myself that I'm a master, I know everything. I believe that's considered philosophical suicide or intellectual suicide because you don't leave anywhere for growth. Beginner's mind, extremely important in the art of learning. Learning how to learn is going to be the most important skill that we're going to have in the future. I appreciate every single one of you taking the time. I think I've gone over 10 minutes. Oh no, I'm at 10 minutes. Oh no, I'm not at 10 minutes. Oh, I'm at 26 minutes. Damn. Some guy just drove past me with a mask. I think it's funny how people are wearing masks inside of their car by themselves. See, that's the level of panic. People are panicking. I understand if you're going into a social setting, okay. But if you're driving in a car by your damn self, there's absolutely no reason for you to be wearing a mask. But hey, whatever helps you sleep at night. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know how many times I'm going to say thank you, but I'm very grateful to have every single one of my listeners. Please get into contact with me at Kid Cody on Instagram. Also, if you want to follow the brand page at the 209 US on Instagram and on Facebook. I don't think I've changed it. I think it's at 209ers. At 209ers, yeah, for Facebook. Please get into contact with me. I love every single one of you. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. One love. Stay safe. Peace.